Hello, everyone. My name is Ben Gilman. I'm a partner at Dualboot Partners, and I am here to talk today about some of our experience starting and growing fast-growing companies. We are think big, act small, grow fast. So first, we'll start off. We'll figure out who exactly and what is Dualboot Partners. Who am I? Ben Gilman. Talk a little bit about the setup, and then we'll talk specifically about ways to think big, ways to act small, and ways to grow fast. And then we'll look at some specific case studies that from our experience, and we'll see how each of these things played out. So Dualboot Partners. So Dualboot Partners is a software development firm. We work with management teams to build software products from strategy all the way through execution. We really focus on technical solutions to business problems. We focus on working with the management teams to identify the items that are affecting their business from a technology point of view and how to address those. We work in 3 different primary areas. We build new products. So entrepreneur comes to us with an idea. We help the entrepreneur vet that idea. We help them analyze the market, and we help them determine what products they should build to address that market. Secondly, we do replatforms. So these are typically existing businesses that have achieved some level of product market fit and have grown to a point where the existing solution no longer either works or supports or scales for the business that they want to run. And thirdly, we do what we call rescue missions. So a rescue mission is, again, typically a company that has established product market fit, but they did it in like maybe a very prototype way, or their software has been running for a little bit, and they really need to figure out how to grow, how to scale, how to support their market. And the software typically struggles from some sort of stability issues. So the software itself is hampering the ability of the company to grow. So in those situations, we will do an assessment, and then we will determine what is the proper course of action. Do we need to think about a V2 of the software? Do we need to think about stability? Is it a DevOps issue? Is it a team issue? And we will provide our recommendations, and then we will implement upon those recommendations as well. All right, so who is Ben Gilman? Who am I? So I'll go through a little bit of my career here and just explain where I started and how I got to where I am. So currently, I am a co-founder and the CTO at Dualboot Partners. We are, like I said before, a software development company. We have about 100 folks on our staff now. My background is a developer. I spent 5 to 10 years doing straight software development, hands-on keyboard. I worked at a variety of different companies, from anywhere from startups to large Fortune 50 companies, always in a role of building software. I then moved through the development ranks and was a development manager. So I had a team underneath me, technical manager, and continued to kind of move through the development ranks from the engineering side until the role of a CTO. And I was the CTO at a mid-sized marketing firm in Charlotte. We built software for Fortune 50 companies. So a fairly streamlined path in terms of development, mostly focused on technology and moving through the management ranks. After I was the CTO at the marketing firm, we spun out some technology. That technology was things that we'd been building in-house. And as the marketing firm, we suffered from a similar problem that many services companies suffer from, which is that you have to work for every dollar that you make. There is no scale. So we attempted to take technology that we had built and productize that technology in order to generate a more stable revenue stream and one that could be leveraged over time. That company was eventually acquired, and when it was acquired, I left. I'd had an idea for a while, and this is probably 7 years ago now, that there was a need in the market for a fractional technology executive. So we'd seen this with CFOs and some of the other roles, but we'd never really seen it with technology. Most technology professionals were committed to 100% to whatever project they were working on. And it seemed to me, based on the work that I'd been doing, that there was actually more of a need to have people with expertise be able to be leveraged across many projects, not just because it reduced the cost of those people that are generally expensive, but it also improved the expertise of the individuals themselves as they were able to see what was happening on a variety of different projects, and their lens, their scope became much wider, and they were able to take the lessons learned on one project and apply it to many different projects. So after the company was acquired, I started doing fractional CTO work. And in the course of doing fractional CTO work, I'd started 3 different companies. Those 3 companies were started by different types of founders, and they all operated inside of different industries. My role was to provide the technology leadership as well as the development teams for each of these companies. I leveraged connections that I had working in the past from overseas and was able to build offshore teams to support these companies. These offshore teams, in addition to being highly talented, were also significantly cheaper than what you could do onshore. And more importantly, they were available. So in my role as a CTO, I'd consistently run into the problem of not being able to find enough qualified resources. And so as we began building these companies, we realized that we could not hire that number of people onshore at a cost that made sense for a early stage company. And so we had to find a different model. So after I'd done this, had these 3 companies running, we had a significant size development team. And then I partnered with 2 other gentlemen that I'd worked with previously, and we started what is now Dualboot Partners. The Dualboot Partners ran software for the companies that we created, as well as now many, many other companies in similar situations. And our current clients span anywhere from early stage entrepreneurs who with just an idea and no technology, to mid-sized companies looking to re-platform existing software, to companies trying to scale on a prototype software and having trouble. And at that point, we step in and we do the analysis and the stabilization of that software. And finally, after doing all that, I'm also an investor now. So I know that as a software engineer starting out in my career, I was never sure how to make it basically from being fingers on keyboard to the point where you were owning, managing, and investing in these companies. And so if anyone has questions about that track specifically, I would be happy to answer them during the Q&A session. All right, so specifically about the topic that we're here today. So I'll break down this into 2 sections. So think big, act small, grow fast. We'll look at it from an organization perspective as well as a technology perspective. So the organization perspective is items that have to be addressed by the founding team that affect the entire organization. So these are any items that you need to think about as an entire team, and really all executive level members of the team should be thinking about these concepts. Technology are items that need to be addressed by the technology team specifically, but are not typically visible to the entire organization. So these are items that as the CTO or the technology leader or the lead developer that you should be thinking about, that the CEO probably should not be thinking about, and most likely doesn't even understand if you would told them how it works. So we'll start with thinking big. So the concept of think big is that you need to have an idea that is big enough to support the level of effort that you are going to put into it. So you look at things like market opportunity. So how big is the addressable market? Can you access that market? Do you currently have access to that market? How are you going to fund this concept? Who is on your team? You need to be thinking about all of these things as you enter into any type of new project. It doesn't mean that you need to act on all of them, and hence where the act small comes from. So while you think about these and you generally have a plan, you really need to think about acting in small ways. So when you think about your team, it's who is on your team, what are the roles, who is going to build the software that you're thinking about, or the product that you're thinking about. And in my experience, there are three key roles that you need on any early stage team. The first role, and the most important role, is who is going to sell your product. Does the person who is going to sell your product have access to the market that they are going to sell into? If you cannot identify who is going to sell the product, or the person who is going to sell does not have access into the market, that you have created significant hurdles to success before you've even started. And in our experience, without this role, the ventures typically do not work. The second thing you need to think about on your team, the second most important role, is customer success. So who manages the customer? So salesperson goes out and sells the customer, close the deal. Somebody has to make sure that that customer is taken care of, that their implementation is successful, and that they are happy and supported while using your product. So you have to identify a person to do that. And thirdly is who is going to build the product that you are selling. This person most likely needs to have experience building products of whatever type you're building, and they should be in a position where they understand exactly how it's done. This is important because many times you take experienced software professionals, but they might have only worked on a couple of projects in their entire career. So they have not seen the full arc of possibilities, and they generally will fall back to making decisions based on things that they understand. So they'll say, we need to use technology A because they have used technology A in the past and they understand it, not because it is the best technology to be used. So again, you need to think about the team holistically in those roles. So you're thinking big about what roles you need on the team. Lastly is lifestyle. So as you're jumping into new projects and new ventures, like what kind of lifestyle do you want to create? And lifestyle is important because it affects funding. If you choose or you decide or the market dictates that you require a large amount of outside capital, you are probably not going to build a lifestyle business that produces an annuity. You are probably going to have to exit that business at some point because the people that you raise your funding from are going to want their return on their investment. Conversely, if you want to build a lifestyle business where you build something that you work at and it produces an income for you, you need to think about, how do I do this bootstrap? How do I not raise capital and do this? How do I use debt or equity in your home or something like that in order to start these? This is key because we have definitely seen situations where founders go and raise capital expecting to build a lifestyle business, and then the investors and the founders have to have a difficult conversation at some point in the future because of misaligned expectations. So again, thinking at the beginning, thinking big about the kind of lifestyle you want to create. On the technology side, thinking big means, can the thing that we are talking about, the product we want to build, actually be implemented? And this is purely from a technology point of view. Like, does the technical capabilities exist to do this? And do they exist at a price point which you can capture? Secondly, who will build it? Are you going to build an internal technology team, or are you going to look to a partner to help you with that technology team? If you do not have experience building internal software teams, it will be very difficult for you to build a high quality, high functioning software team. So these are, again, thinking big at the beginning. How do I build the team? Who is on that team? Who leads that team? Lastly is, will the technology scale? So you can build technology, that is fantastic. But if it doesn't scale, it will never develop into a company. You will never be able to outrun the cost of building the single piece of technology that you build. in almost all cases, you have to have scale in order to make these ideas work. So you need to think big about all of these concepts as you go into new ventures or even new projects or internal ventures. You need to be thinking about all of these ideas and making sure that you at least are directionally aligned with how you're going to solve them. So now that we have our big concepts, we've thought about our big concepts, now we need to focus on acting, and we need to act small. And what we mean by that is that there is only a certain amount of things that you can do in any given day. And you need to be very specific about the things that you are going to do with the limited time that you have. So on the organization side, you need to think about, how do you sell? How do you sell the product that you have? How do you access the market? Is it free? Do you charge? What does the pricing look like? If you don't know the answer to those questions, how do you figure out the answer to those questions? Who is on your team? Which people specifically are on your team? And be sure that you are hiring high quality people to start with, especially in the beginning, because your team will be small. So every individual contributor's contribution will be amplified. And most importantly, who are your first 10 customers? In our experience, if you do not know and can name your first 10 customers, your business concept has significantly less likelihood of being successful. The most successful companies that we work with can tell you who their first 10 customers are before they tell you what the product is. These are people they know or businesses they know that they have worked with in the past, and those people trust them. They will implicitly buy or work with them in any way that they are asked. And this is hyper important and cannot be underestimated, because when you sell your first 10 customers, you are selling trust, not your product most of the time. All right, so acting small on the technology side means MVP, MVP, MVP. It means constantly reducing the amount of scope that you're trying to implement. How do I design and produce the smallest product possible that creates value for my customers as quickly as possible? You need to think that time is not on your side. You need to go as fast as possible. And the best way to do that is by reducing any outside noise around the feature set that you are trying to develop to bring your product to market or your replatform to market. This, again, cannot be underestimated. Companies fail because they are not focused on the thing that drives value for their customers. Secondly, act small. You want the smallest development team possible. That means one person, two people, three people at most. If you have a development team with 5 or 10 or 20 people, the amount of inefficient overhead that is required to maintain and run that team grows with every additional developer that you add. And in our experience, a solid team of 2 to 3 to maybe 4 developers can produce an incredible amount of code if the MVP scope is clear. So if you are struggling with either developer efficiency or productivity, you might want to look at the size of your team and reduce it. How do I make it smaller? The scope of your MVP, how do I make it smaller? Think about, how do I do less constantly? Be focused on the most valuable thing that you can do. And lastly is a standard development process. And this, again, I think cannot be overestimated, because what a standard development process does is it makes your small team of developers extremely efficient. It means that there's no guessing, there's no rework about how things work in the process. How do developers start working on the feature that they have? How do they move that feature into test? How is the feature tested? How is the code that they wrote reviewed by another developer? How is that updated feature deployed into the production environment. All of those things should be standardized, and they should be repeatable, and they should be well known by everyone on the team, so that the developers are taking the smallest actions possible while producing the most amount of product. So, in conclusion, you want to think about acting small, about doing less with your individual day-to-day actions. How do we focus on doing only the most important things in order to make the business or the technology successful? All right, so here we are. Here's where we want to be. We want to grow fast. Everyone wants to grow fast. So for an organizational level, probably the most important thing in growing fast, assuming that you've thought big and that you've acted small, is decisiveness, the ability to make rapid decisions and not be hung up in the decision-making process. Not all of your decisions will be right, and it doesn't matter how much time you spend making them, you will definitely have some wrong decisions. So you need to make those decisions as fast as possible so you can figure out if they are right or wrong as quickly as possible. This follows the fail fast mentality that says, look, not everything is going to work, so let's figure out what's going to work and what won't as quickly as possible. Secondly, KPIs, so key performance indicators. It basically means, how do you know if you're succeeding? What are you looking at to tell you that you are successful or not successful? How do you know when you need to make a change or when you need to pour more gas on the fire? So understanding what your KPIs are and having them aligned with the goals of the business is critically important to being able to grow fast. And third is hiring. You will not be able to grow quickly without growing your team. Either your sales team, your customer support team, your technology team, your marketing team. In order to support growth, you always have to have people on the team that can help you do that. So putting a process in place and planning to hire good, effective people is critically important to being able to grow fast. If you cannot hire the team that you need, chances are you can grow and to the point where you can grow no more, and then you will begin to contract because the quality of your service and the quality of the product will begin to reduce. So having the ability to hire the people you need on the team at the time that you need them is critically important. On the technology side, your product needs to be stable. If your team is spending most of their day putting out fires or addressing technical debt, you will not be able to continue to grow the product the way that your customers are going to ask you to. So you need to start from the beginning and build a stable foundation that you can build upon and that will scale with both the size of your company, the size of your development teams, and the size of your revenue. Secondly, development productivity. So you need your developers to become more and more productive as your product grows. Because as your product grows, your development team will grow. And inherently, a larger development team has more inefficiency. So in order to maintain the same level of output, you need each developer to become more productive as you add additional developers to the team to make up for the overall inefficiency that is generated by adding additional people to the team. And thirdly, MVP, MVP, MVP again. Continue to think about how to reduce the amount that you are trying to develop, trying to build, trying to expand on your product in order to go faster. There is no reason that at a certain point you say, oh, we're past the MVP state, now we can build everything. But you still need to prioritize based on the business priorities, based on your KPIs, based on the overall goals of the company, and only work on the most important things. If you follow these steps, it is pretty much a recipe in our experience to be able to grow fast. All right, let's take a look at some case studies. These are all real case studies that companies that Dualboot has worked with. and the names have been removed to protect the innocent. So we're looking at company A, company B, company C, and we're looking at it across the market, the team, and the product market fit. So market means basically, what does the market look like? What was the access to the market? Things like that. Team is who's on the team, how effective was the team, what were the roles on the team. Product market fit is obviously how well was the product received by the market. So Company A had an average market. It was actually small market, so relatively low total addressable market, tens of millions of dollars. The company and the founder had some access to that market, but most of his access was through a personal network. So he did not personally have, nor did anyone on the team have personal experience working in the market. His team was average as well. The entrepreneur himself was inexperienced and relatively indecisive. So he lacked the ability to make rapid decisions, which affected the ability of the company to grow. But he was able to hire and build a strong team over time, and he had a heavy focus on sales. So he would sell regardless of where the product stood. And as he was sold and brought additional clients on, the technology team was able to build features that matched what those customers need. And product market fit was average as well. The initial product had limited interest. However, after working with several clients, we were able to identify a adjacent product that would fit the needs that they were asking for. We were able to pivot the company, at which point we filled a clear and unmet need in the market. And the result of this company was average as well for Dualboot. So they hit the $1 million ARR mark in year 5, and they have modest projected growth. Company B had a large macro market, but a very small targeted market, which means that when you talk about the overall market that they were going after, it was huge. But when you dialed into what their product specifically did, it was actually a very, very small segment of the overall market that used the product. The company also had very limited access to the market. So while the entrepreneur had worked in the market, he did not have access to the specific target area of the market he was going after. The team was weak. The team was weak because while the entrepreneur was experienced in the market, he was an inexperienced entrepreneur, and specifically because he did not focus on sales. He focused almost all of his effort on the product. So we were able to build a fantastic product that had no customers and didn't really meet and missed the needs of the customers. And that's where the product market fit is also weak, because the product basically missed the entire big picture of the market. And the result was also weak. The company is currently not operating, and there is no growth projected. Company C had a huge market. The company had direct access to that market. The team was strong. We had an experienced entrepreneur. This entrepreneur had started several companies in the past and had a history in sales. And we started with a strong technical team as well. So there was no mistakes, basically. The ability to make decisions and execute on those decisions was very, very high. And that basically sped up the growth of the company. The product market fit was also strong. There was no pivot. The original concept of the product filled the clear and unmet need that existed in the market. It also had an interesting pricing model in that the product was free to the buyer. And the buyers were able to resell it to generate additional revenue for themselves to their customers. So not only was the product free for the buyer, it generated revenue for the buyer. So it was very easy to sell. It was merely a matter of implementation that had to be tackled. And the result of Company C was strong. It hit $1 million in ARR in year 3, and it has significant growth prospects. So I'd like to thank you all for listening, and I'm happy to take any of your questions.